Okay, is my audio back, guys? Okay, perfect. I am so sorry about that. And to be honest, I'm not really sure what the last thing you all heard was. So I will just go ahead and start again with this slide. I apologize that. You know, it's always going to happen like this when things are live. And unfortunately, it's always going to happen to me. It's just the way that my life works. Okay, so okay, thank you, Stephanie. We heard most of this slide. Perfect. Again, I'm going to make a plug one more time just to make sure that you are registering for every single webinar separately for each week. I know that we're fully aware of how busy everyone is in your day-to-day life. I, too, was once a site coordinator. I know how crazy it is. And we know that you could just take these courses on your own, but this is an additional super valuable experience that builds connections between the other site coordinators across the network, your national office, and then other networks or other network peers in general. So, I mean, these weekly sessions are our time to virtually come together, which I know is sometimes a little bit harder than it would be if we were in person. But I believe that we have a pretty exciting 6 weeks ahead of us. So, okay, let's go over some resources. So you have a lot of resources and support materials for you to take advantage of, and everything is at your fingertips right in the LMS. So you can find the week-by-week document, the at-a-glance calendar that we just went over, FAQs, things of that sort, and I know that Deanna's also emailed those, but I did want to make a point to let you all know that they are also uploaded in the LMS. A couple of other resources that I want to go over. The Site Coordinator Learning Pathway Bootcamp Yammer group, again with this super long name. If you guys haven't already joined, please go ahead and join that Yammer group. It's just another space for us to ask questions, connect with one another, brag on one another, questions about the courses, so on and so forth. Again, our main email is the bootcamp@sysnet.org. It's going to come straight to myself and Deanna, and we will answer very quickly. Any LMS questions, that's going to be Ernestine Peterson, and let me drop this email right into the chat box so you guys have that as well. Sorry, I can't multitask. Okay, so I just wanted to make those plugs and those reminders. And I have one more housekeeping tip for all of you. So let's switch gears over to technology platform. Clearly, we've already had a little hiccup along the way. Thank God it happened to me. But I'm sure that many of you have used WebEx or something similar, like a similar platform, a GoToMeeting, something of that sort. But I wanted to do a quick technology review just on ways to communicate with us during the weekly bootcamp webinars, which, thank God, it seems like most of you already knew that, or I wouldn't have known that my audio stopped or came back on. So I just wanted to give a reminder that all of you are on mute. It's just to avoid the mass chaos of background noise coming in from 100+ different people, or I guess we're up to 87 now. But that does not mean that we don't want to hear from you. We have a couple of ways for you to communicate with us. And so if you take a look, and I keep laughing at this because it's just such a super flattering picture of us, but if you take a look at the screenshot of Deanna and I, you'll notice a chat box at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So please type in any questions or comments, concerns, whatever you all have throughout the webinar. And we will take a look and bring up accordingly to our panelists, or just something that, a quick text to me or Deanna. So I will go ahead and give you guys a few minutes to find that chat box. Go ahead and give a shout out to your affiliate so we can see who all is joining us today. And I will go ahead and start us off. Oh, come on, y'all, don't be shy. Okay, so while you guys are finding that, I also wanted to point out there is a little tiny grayed out hand that is over the chat box. And that little tiny hand is how you can raise your hand. Notice the air quotes here. So once you click that button, it notifies myself and Deanna that you have either a question or a comment and you want to be unmuted because you'd like to personally ask that question. And again, we will see those pop up throughout the presentation, and we will give you a heads up that we're about to unmute you so you can go ahead and prepare to ask your question. And then last but not least, we strongly encourage all of you to join each webinar live. However, I know that, day-to-day stuff can get a little bit busy, so all of these webinars will be recorded. But again, hopefully you guys will be able to set aside that hour weekly for the next 6 weeks. Oh, I love the shout outs. Oh, okay, thank you, Kara, for pointing that out. So it looks like you can send to all panelists, but not all participants. Thank you for letting us know, and that's just something that we can fix on the back end, so no worries. Okay, folks, introduction of learning leaders. This is what I'm most excited about today. So as we know, bootcamp is not just about the CISU courses, the assessments, and the webinars. Bootcamp is about creating a team of support in your colleagues from across the network and the national office. So to help us really dive deep into these site-level topic areas that you'll find in the courses, that you find the courses focus on each week, we have a little help with all of that information with some of our experts from across the network. So whether the webinar consists of a panel discussion like we're going to have today, a breakout session, or a network presenter, these learning group leaders, as we are calling them, are going to be there with us every step of the way, and they'll be a part of bootcamp each and every week. So the role of these learning group leaders is to help lead these webinars and to bring you some real-life examples of network support to troubleshoot issues, and just really help you feel confident in your every day-to-day work. So, learning leaders, without further ado, I am going to kick it over to our first learning leader, Jessica Baker, and I believe, Deanna, are you able to unmute her?
Unmuted. She's actually logged in as me, and I am logged in as our coworker Jacqueline Stedman. So
perfect. Okay, so do we have her on the line where we can unmute?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Jessica, take it away.
Okay, and I am on audio because I'm having some technology glitches with getting on the system, so I apologize.
Fine.
But I appreciate you all having me here today, and I'm very passionate about the work that we do with CIS. I've been with Communities in Schools for 8 years, on the site level for about 7, working in alternative education in urban settings as well as startup in urban settings. Currently, I'm Director of Operations for Northampton and Berks County, overseeing our programs at the site level. And I'm just really happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica. And sorry about all the technology issues. It's always going to happen the first go-round, so. Okay, next we have Alex. Alex, I am going to, or actually, Deanna, are you able to unmute her? Hey, Alex, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay. All right. I'm Alex Littleton. I am Program Director for CIS of Southwest Virginia and CIS of New River Valley. If you're familiar with Virginia and all that is pretty much everything west of Roanoke. I started out as a site coordinator for CIS of Southwest Virginia about 2.5 years ago, and I was at an elementary school for a year, and then I moved to the middle school, and now I am program director, supervising site coordinators and 7 schools and 4 school districts in 2 different affiliates. And I am also excited to be here with you guys.
Perfect, and we are pumped to have you. All right, let's roll into Tasha. Tasha, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group.
Hi, I'm Tasha Moore. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with CIS of North Texas. I have been in the CIS network for 9 years. I started out in the heart of Texas in Waco, and then moved here to North Texas about 5 years ago. I've done elementary as a site coordinator, middle school as a site coordinator, just a whole host of things. I'm very excited to be part of this.
Perfect, thanks Tasha. And the last one that we have, the last learning group leader that we have is Daniela, who hails from Los Angeles, but unfortunately she is not feeling so hot today. She is actually out with a stomach bug, so I will give her a quick introduction, and she will be joining us for the rest of the boot camp. So she, like the majority of our learning leaders here, started off as a site coordinator for a middle school. She was a site coordinator for 3 years, absolutely loved it, but recently stepped away from that role and is now a program manager. So she's been with CIS for 6 years, and we are thrilled to have her, as we are all of our learning leaders. So as you can see, all of these folks have something in common. They have all been on site. They are doing the work that you do every single day. And what better way to really drive the work home than to really hear from experts in the network. I think is going to be the most valuable tool that we really can give you throughout these boot camps. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's boot camp, shall we? We are going to be focusing on a panel discussion, which is going to feature Alex, Tasha, and Jessica, everyone that you just met. So at the beginning of each course, you're going to notice the course objectives. So here, the course objectives. So what we have been doing is we've been pulling these course objectives and trying to bring these to light. So obviously, you know, for the first 2, which you guys should have already completed or are completing, we're just defining the site coordinator role, the 3 tiers of support, the relationship between the site coordinator and case management, things of that sort. But I also thought that it would be probably valuable for us to have the learning group leaders shed a little bit of light on the knowledge that they have already learned throughout their various roles at communities and schools. So let's get to our panel discussion. Ladies, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. The first question that we have for you is, during your first years as a site coordinator, what do you wish you would have known from day 1? Which is kind of a loaded question, I'm sure. But Jessica, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I started out my work with communities and schools as a site coordinator working in a middle school in an urban area in Pennsylvania with alternative ed. So definitely those students had a lot of mental health issues and a lot of behavioral health issues. And what I wish I knew then in reflecting is just how important it is to have a self-care practice for yourself. A lot of times we're immersed in schools. They can be really charged environments, and we get to follow a school cycle, the highs and the lows. And typically we work with challenging populations. So it's important to be able to reflect and have that time for yourself. And I certainly wish I would have known more of that in the beginning of doing the work. And now it's great because years later, I kind of have something that I do. I have a care routine that I do and I utilize every day. And certainly there's days that I don't walk to my yoga class. I run there because I know I need it so much. And I know that when I leave, I'll always have a different perspective on the work that I do day to day because I'll have a different perspective on myself. So I definitely feel like that's an important piece of the work that we do with kids and students and families.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And I know that that self-care topic is one that just continues to pop up. I know it's been popping up as a hot topic across the network since I've been with communities and schools, which has been, I don't know, 8 years now, something around there. And I know that things like, you know, Town Hall or the Student Supports Virtual Summit, we're continuing to really focus in on topics like that. So it's always good to know that you also kind of pointed that out. And I'd love to chat a little bit more about that if we have time at the end, too, to give folks a little better idea. Alex, before I toss it over to you, I am going to have Deanna launch a poll for us. So you will see a poll come up on the left side of, excuse me, the right side of your screen. If you guys can go ahead and lock in your answers for these polls as Alex takes it away.
Okay, so one of the things I wish I had known when I started is that it's okay not to know anything. I remember starting and it seemed like such a big role, and there were so many different things that I could do that it seemed somewhat overwhelming. So while the freedom to do a lot of things is a big blessing, in the beginning I think it was just a little overwhelming. So my advice to myself when I first started would have been to just not stress so much about it, and that with time I would figure out what to do and how my role with communities and schools fit into the school that I was placed in.
So can I dive a little bit into that? I'm just wondering, for those that are on the phone today, what are the types of learning experiences or training or anything that did help you in that first year, Alex?
Talking to other site coordinators. You know, when I started, it was me and one other site coordinator in Southwest Virginia, in Bristol, Virginia. The closest other affiliate to us was 6 hours away. So it wasn't like someone that we could meet with for coffee to talk about, you know, the things that we were doing or the challenges we were facing. But the opportunities that we did have, like with Elizabeth Muse, who was at our state office, in those sorts of opportunities really made a difference.
Perfect. And I promise I didn't cue her up on that. I was just myself wondering. And as you were saying that, just talking about the resources and, you know, not able to just grab coffee like you were saying with other site coordinators. Another shout out just popped up in the chat box from Northwest Michigan, which I believe is another one of our rural sites. So shout out to Wendy. Thank you for chatting. Hopefully you'll get to learn a little bit from Alex as we move forward, because I know that you know, the rural versus urban is also a hot topic, so I'm really hoping that we can hone in on that in a couple of weeks as well. Tasha, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Yeah, what I would tell myself when I first started, you can't be everything for everybody. Set good boundaries in the beginning. It's much easier to say, I can do this, I can't do this, I'm going to have to ask for help early on, then have to go back and re-teach people what your role is and what you're able to do. So don't expect to know to do everything, and have good boundaries and self-care.
Great, that's really good advice. So let's move straight into the second question. If you all can tell us about a tough situation that you faced as a site coordinator or on site, and how did you overcome that tough situation? And Tasha, since you're already up on my screen, I'm going to call on you again if that's cool.
Sure. Oh, gosh. I think one of the most recent situations that was the toughest for me as a site coordinator was working with a middle school student who had made an outcry of sexual abuse by her father. And how do you handle that? How do you balance confidentiality with the dignity that the student deserves? How do you make sure the right people are involved so that they stay safe? How do you seek the right supervision? Making sure that you're not trying to make a decision all on your own, but that you're doing it well and you're doing it with what's best for the kids. So what I had to do was step back and say, I don't know it all. I know how to do the first few steps, and I need to call. I need to ask my supervisor. I need to ask my coworkers. Okay, I have a student. Here's the scenario. Have I missed something? Is there something else I can do to help them, to help the family? What should I prepare for after all this is over and they're back in the classroom? How can I help them long term? Yeah.
That is tough. And I know that a lot of the content that is reviewed in the CISU courses touch a little bit on that. It doesn't make it any easier, certainly, but it does hopefully provide support for these site coordinators when it comes to tough situations like that. And if anyone, again, as we're moving through this panel discussion and our learning group leaders are answering, if anyone has any comments or questions, follow-up questions for any of them, please just shoot them in that chat box. All right, so Jessica Baker, can you tell us about a tough situation you faced as a site coordinator and how you overcame that?
Yeah, sure. For us, it was because we dealt so significantly with kids with mental health issues at the high school. With that came a lot of drug and alcohol issues, and we'd had a lot of kids that were participating in drug use on campus, and then we're also in the community, and so it was draining on resources, whether it was criminal justice, and then outside of school, and then in the school, the community resources, school administration, guidance, and security. And one of the reasons that was happening is because a lot of the students there didn't have access to services because they were a vulnerable population, and so when they needed those services, they were referred out to providers that they couldn't access that were 20 to 30 miles away. And our students had to rely on public transportation. And so through some careful conversations with the school and the district, we were able to justify the need based on the fact that the resources were being drained to reposition providers to the school and create a district change for the school district. For that, they actually put a policy in place so that students, when they were caught using drugs on campus, there was a policy in place by the board so that students could access those services on site, which was really a great thing. So it was definitely a challenge for everybody involved within the system, but after careful time on planning and everyone coming together, we were able to find some solutions that were effective, that created some change for the students individually, and then for the system, for the school system, and then the district system.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Alex, do you have anything for this one that you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, when I started with one other site coordinator. When I started, it was the second year our affiliate had a site coordinator. And then we were, like I said, 6 hours away from the closest affiliate. And the year before, the school really hadn't gotten a great feel for what communities and schools is and what we can provide for the students and the family. And so I had to work really hard to kind of overcome some preconceived notions that maybe not were all that correct, and had to kind of pull the teachers back on our side and show them that, you know, we were there to help, we were there to support the students and support the families, and that's it. You know, we weren't there to spy on the classrooms, we weren't there to, you know, change how they were teaching or addressing students. We were there as a support system. And eventually, through just persistence and just doing my job from day to day, you know, the teachers really came to see that we were a positive addition to the school. And so the next year, we got tons of referrals from the teachers and from the staff, and continue to this day. So, you know, it wasn't easy, and it did not happen overnight, but just being persistent, I think, really overcame those preconceived notions.
That's perfect. And it's funny because we had a chat or a question come up in the chat box that you kind of just touched on, so I won't call on you again, but one of those questions that came in, let me find it. What success stories do you use to prove how valuable CIS is to educating to educators or in the community. And it sounds like you just being there in the school and really just being that positive person in there and not saying, hey, I'm not here to take your job. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you and whatever you need. So looks like we already touched on that one a little bit. What about this question that just popped up? Who do you lean on in your communities for support? I'm interested in your answer, Alex, because I know that you're you're in a rural spot up there in Virginia.
Well, you know, I lean on the other site coordinator that I started with because we've kind of been through the trenches together. But I've also, or we have a incredible support team. And we actually combined our teams because our schools are so close together and the families, you know, we're serving families at both the elementary and middle school level. But those folks have been in the social services sector for years, and so they really know the resources that are available, and they know how to work with those families. And so when we were new and kind of trying to figure our way through it, those other community agency people were really supportive.
Perfect. Thanks. We have a question from, sorry, it's so faint to read these things. My forehead is getting closer to the video. From Jackie Woody. How large was your caseload when you were a site coordinator? Alex, I'm going to put you on the hot seat again, and then I'll move over, sorry, to Jessica and Tasha. It's just because you're right there already.
Well, you know, it grew with time. The first year, it was probably closer to 30, and then, you know, when I stepped away from the school this year, it was closer to 40 or 50. So, you know, we're, in Bristol at least, we're kind of hovering right at that saturation rate for our schools. But, you know, we find that the higher our caseload gets, the more creative we have to be in providing support because we're only one person. And you can't, if you've got 50 kids on your caseload, you can't be the one that's providing all the services directly to that student. You've got to figure out other ways to support them.
Absolutely agree. Jessica, do you want to touch on that one as well?
Yeah, I think I think the point that was just made about building bridges for our students, so we're not the only person in their life, is key for sure, because we want to empower our students to, like, we want to be almost the vessel to teach them that what a healthy relationship is and help them create that with other adults. So definitely that was a valid point. And for me, it was about, I think it was about probably, it was many, many years ago doing alternative ed when I first started as a site coordinator, so that it was probably up to about 30 to 35. And at the high school as a site coordinator, because there were other responsibilities, and I was more or less leading a team of 2 other support specialists that were doing case management too at the school. I had about 25 max, and a good portion of them were high need kids. And then the support specialists that were with us that were doing the case management, just that, we had about 30 to 35.
And we have a couple of chats coming in from Jasmine Cruz just saying, you know, her caseload is 85 and it's extremely hard to be that all-around person. And this comment, I mean, I've heard that comment several times just in the years I've been working with communities and schools. So why don't we, meaning our learning group leaders, because you guys are the experts, I am not, is there a way that we can just maybe touch on that? How it is hard to be that all-around person. It's hard to be the one person when you're trying to provide all of these wraparound supports for your students, and some need more than others. So how do we do that? What are some best practices that you all have or have heard of, some of your site coordinators on your case now see? Let's talk a little bit about that. And Jessica, it's fine if you go ahead and start off. I know I want to get to Tasha as well.
Okay, I think that's a great point. Definitely looking at the level of need, so maybe looking at the caseload and determining which are your highest need students, and then which are your middle need students, and which are maybe your lower need students is a good place to start. and then from there looking at where you can bring in providers and partners from the community that are already built into your program, or that you can seek out those resources where they could come in and do a specialized group for 8 weeks, so you could plug in maybe your moderate kids or your, depending on what the needs are, if you're facilitating like a conflict res group or an anger management group or a grief and loss group, so that they get that number of touches. That way, groups are a great way to provide that intensive service, that peer-to-peer learning for sure for kids, and it's an empowerment tool. And that would be a good way to bring in that support and increase the frequency of service.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and just because I manage our national partners at the national level, I know that we have several partners across the network that provide the curriculum and just some really great ideas around the small groups and things like that. I mean, heck, we even have some affiliates with really, really great small group programs. You know, the XY Zone is one that comes to mind immediately. I'm sure some of you are trained or have heard about it. But just really making sure, you know, obviously hitting them in groups is going to be helpful there. Tasha, do you have anything to add to that?
I would add, take time to plan. Take time to sit and look at what your students' schedules are, what your availability is, so that you can go into something knowing when you have time, who's in what group, so that you can ensure that you're touching every one of your kids. And I would echo what Jessica said, leverage your resources in the community, mentors, volunteers, universities and colleges if you're close to them. Pull them in, engage them in what you're doing, and get them involved on your campus.
That's also great advice. Alex, do you have anything to add? I know that they've put up some pretty strong best practices there.
No, I mean, I would just echo the small groups. You know, when being able to group students that have similar goals and can receive similar services really help. And also, if you've got service providers in your school, like day treatment and those sorts of things, those kids are getting those relationships from those type providers, so you can kind of back away from being that adult relationship and just helping coordinate, you know, their overall services.
Right, and I have a question of my own that might be kind of a loaded question, but all of you have mentioned the brokering services or providing the direct services. How do you know when to do that? How do you know when to step in, when to step out, when to bring those partners or community entities in? And any of you can answer that. You're all on mute. You're all subject to my mercy at this point.
I would say, oh, whoever wants to go.
Go ahead, Jessica, it's you.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. I would say for us, we looked at that a lot at the high school, and for us it was who's the expert in the field. Like, can we do it ourselves? Was the first thing. Is there someone more qualified to do this than us? Like for us, we knew we weren't the experts in healthy and unhealthy relationships, so we knew we needed to find a provider for that. And then, how deep will that provider go? Will they go to the depth that we need them to go? Will it be superficial, kind of just basic skills, or will they go deeper with the issues, depending on like what the needs are of the kids? And then depending on that, we're able to leverage the providers that were local to come in, because a lot of times the providers in our area that do those kinds of services are funded through the counties, through their Department of Health and Human Services, so they need to have those numbers. And so really it's mutually beneficial for all, because so we're doing the legwork almost for the providers to get them the right kids at the right time in the right place, so it works for everybody.
Perfect. And Tasha or Alex, did you have anything else to add to that, or?
I would just add that when you're looking through your campus needs assessment and working with your staff on campus, making sure that you're looking at what the gaps are that's not already there, just like a specific property expert who is the expert in the community, but taking the time to do that.
Makes total sense. I am loving all of these questions coming in, guys. All right, one more, and Alex, this might put you in the hot seat again. How do you go about recruiting volunteers and mentors when you're in a very rural area where there are not a lot of resources?
That is a great question, and one that we, we continue to kind of work through. Here in Bristol, we're in the South, and we rely on our churches to do a whole lot of things. We've also, or some of the schools have reading buddy programs, and I think as far as mentors go, people feel more comfortable with kind of established programs, and so if you can plug in to a program like that, people are more willing to step up as a mentor. We've also used civic organizations here in town, but again, I would say your churches are going to be the best places to kind of pull volunteers from that are wanting to help kids.
Yep, that makes total sense, and I know that in the past we've had folks from very rural affiliates in North Carolina that have really focused on bringing in the local churches and things like that, so definitely echoing everything that you just said. I think it's very, very useful. Okay, so the chat box is starting to die down a little bit, and I realize that time is flying. We only have about 15 more minutes, so please keep the chats coming if you guys have questions for our learning group leaders. But as we are wrapping up, I am going to share one more slide with you. I first want to thank the learning group leaders just for joining us and really sharing your expertise. Again, it's one of those things where we can learn about it on a course, we can read about it, but until you're actually talking to someone that says, hey, yeah, I'm in a rural area, I have no clue how to find mentors, teach me, what do I do, what are the best practices around brokering services, things like that. It's just so much easier to learn from that peer-to-peer sharing and best practices, things like that. So I am going to pause for a minute for some questions. Remember, you can use the chat box or you can raise your hand. Again, it started to die down a little bit, but I'll give you guys a minute if you have any last-minute questions. And it can be about anything, IP-related, boot camp-related, anything for our learning group leaders. Any questions at all? Okay, so I have one question come in. Is there a national platform where we can see the wealth of knowledge in small groups across affiliates? We would love to see what others are doing and share things that work in our schools. I do not have an answer for you on that right now, to be completely honest, but there are some things in the works right now at the national level that will hopefully do just that, so stay tuned on that. Ooh, this is a good one from Amy Queen, I think. Gosh, it's so faint over here. From Amy Queen. She says, give me a blanket statement to describe communities and schools and my job as a site coordinator to people who ask. Let's go, ladies. I love this question.
It's such a hard question. Amy, this is actually one of our new site coordinators. I would say that Communities and Schools is the leading dropout prevention organization in the country, and we do that by providing integrated student support to our site schools, and that as a site coordinator, you're there to coordinate and broker those services.
So our Vice President of Communications, Steve Majors, would be very, very proud of you right now. And because that was great. And I also feel like I saw a slide somewhere on a national presentation with like just a quick elevator speech. So I want to look, I'll make a note to myself to look back at that too, because I think that just really having that quick, here's CIS, this is what we do, we're awesome because of X, Y, and Z is going to be really, really helpful. And Amy said, could you repeat that again, Alex? But I know that you know her, so I'm going to let you take that one offline.
Yeah, very good.
Will we be able to share from, okay, this is from Lauren in Nashville. Will you be able to share a participant list with the affiliate urban, rural, so we can build our internal contact base? Absolutely, Lauren, I will definitely do that. And then Stephanie, do they mean Yammer with the question on national platform? Oh, yeah. Duh, I should probably promote that. Didn't even think about that being an answer to the question above, but yes, Yammer, as I'm sure most of you already know, this is our social intranet site. Well, I don't want to say everyone, a lot of the network for communities and schools is already on Yammer. It is a way to connect with one another, whether it be a state director, a site coordinator, a program manager, whatever. So Yammer is very, very, very helpful. And I know Deanna just typed something into the chat box. If you guys are all able to join Yammer, if you already haven't done so. And again, I'm going to plug it again because we already have a Yammer group for this boot camp, the 2017 boot camp experience. So you guys are more than welcome to join that. In fact, we encourage you to. And you can ask questions offline when we're not in our 1 hour per week, because it seems like such little time. One other thing that I cannot believe that no one has asked us about is the CEUs. You guys get CEUs for the boot camp, which I think is pretty incredible. I know that not all of you need CEUs, but for those of you that do, it's one of the most exciting parts. So once you go through the entire site coordinator learning pathway, you complete all of the assessments with an 80% or higher, you are going to receive 1.3 CEUs. And then you also get a certificate at the completion of boot camp. And for those of you that probably already know this, that need CEUs, you get 1 CEU hour, or 1 CEU per every 10 hours of learning, I believe. So that's something very, very exciting that our team at the national office has worked really, really hard on last couple of years, actually. Okay, so yes, thank you, Deanna. I forgot. The National Resource Center, I should have put this on the slide. I'm very sorry. It is going to ask you for a password. The password is empower, just for everyone's notes. And this is going to be in emails and that sort of thing as well. Okay, Deanna, did I forget anything? I hope not. Sorry, Lauren, it is for the SCLP that CEUs are.
I don't think you're forgetting everything, but to get the CEUs for Site Coordinator Learning Pathway Bootcamp, which is what you guys are doing now, you do need to either attend every live webinar or watch the recording. They will be housed in the LMS where your courses are, but you do have to attend those to get the CEU credit.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay. All right, gang, I'm going to give you 7 minutes back into your Thursday afternoon. I want to give a quick reminder that next week you should be reviewing the courses and completing the assessments for the courses for implementing integrated student supports and also the Engaging Your School support team. So come ready to engage with our learning leaders because we are going to break out into smaller groups in the next webinar. Don't worry, we will have it all set up for you already, and we will convene again next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I just want to give a quick shout out to our learning group leaders. Ladies, thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge and your continued support throughout boot camp. All right, thank you guys for joining. If you have any questions, just don't feel free, or excuse me, feel free to reach out to either myself or Deanna, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Take care.